You know, only in America, or maybe only in this crazy high-stakes corner of the clean energy industry, would a woman like me, Dr. Anya Vance, step into a room and be deemed not worth the trouble, even while holding a $950 million deal in my hands. And I mean literally holding it. I remember stepping off the private jet in Shanghai, the autumn air crisp and almost electric, and feeling that familiar pressure, that sense of walking into a gladiator arena dressed in a custom Caltech-grade Navy suit. My company, Apex Energy Solutions, was about to merge with the Sterling Group, a Chinese giant built on 3 generations of coal and old-world pride. It was supposed to be the biggest deal of my career. My assistant, Chloe Reyes, God bless her soul, was right behind me, tablet in hand, checking every minute detail. My mother always told me, "Baby, predators hunt the moment you blink." And that phrase, uttered years ago while she was scrubbing floors in suburban Atlanta, taught me more about corporate power than my 2 degrees from Caltech ever could. I know exactly how the powerful act when they think no one's watching them. And that's the story I'm here to tell you. The first person we met was Marcus Sterling, the heir apparent, Harvard MBA, slick, handsome in a way that screamed born into it, not earned it. The moment his father, Elias Sterling, wasn't looking, Marcus leaned in, flashing that practiced, too-wide smile. He called me a diversity hire right there on the tarmac, his English flawless, his tone heavy with patronizing contempt. I just smiled, the jaw muscle beneath my porcelain exterior doing a tiny, invisible twitch. But that was just the appetizer. The negotiations were brutal, of course, but it was the whispers that got me. During a tea break, Marcus and his senior executives retreated to a corner, chuckling softly. They switched to Mandarin, talking about my posture, my tailored suit, and my degrees. I heard Marcus say, clear as a bell, "Our servant looks tense." Then he threw out the line that would define the entire trip. "Hey, Nu Yong Ren, black servant." It rolled off his tongue with a lazy cruelty, and the whole room, the men who thought they were kings, snickered along, confident in their language fortress. What none of them, absolutely none of them, realized was that I hadn't just studied engineering at Caltech. I had spent 2 years in graduate school at Fudan University in Shanghai. I understood every poisonous, condescending syllable. I kept my face utterly blank. They thought I was a powerless woman, a prop in their grand patriarchal theater. They had no idea they were seconds away from detonating a $950 million bomb that would bury their entire dynasty. The moment Chloe and I were alone, the hunt began. We weren't just checking contracts, we were digging graves. The patent clauses Marcus secretly inserted were bad enough, a fast track to stealing our core solar technology. It was a classic gut job, planned to push us out of the Asian market within 6 months. But the financial fraud Chloe uncovered went deeper, a tangled web of shell companies and offshore accounts. And then came the gut punch, the factory audit reports and worker manifests, hidden deep in their servers. That's where we found the evidence of forced labor, people held against their will, passports confiscated. This wasn't just corporate greed, this was human destruction masked by billions of dollars. And then there was the man who held the keys to my house, our CFO, Thomas Finch. I had promoted him, defended him to the board, seen him as a mentor, but the timeline was too perfect, the contract changes too precise. The night we were fighting them off in my hotel room, I remember kicking hard, throwing that lamp. When I saw Thomas back in Atlanta trying to embrace me with crocodile tears, I saw it. A deep, fresh scratch near his watch. And then I remembered the gold custom-made cufflink I found shattered in the wreckage of my Beijing suite, the one Thomas always wore. He wasn't just a mole, he was an active conspirator. He was there, watching his thugs try to terrorize me. That realization, the absolute, total betrayal, was a pain colder than any business loss. I knew I couldn't wait for a formal investigation. They would spin this into a translation error or a misunderstanding. We had to hit them where they hurt most, publicly, immediately, and irrevocably. The final scene took place at a lavish Sterling Group banquet. Marcus, 3 glasses of fine wine deep, was holding court, his Western facade cracking under the pressure. He interrupted my conversation with the British investor just to mock my education, my merit-based admission to Caltech. And then he did it again. He leaned back, thinking his work was done, and used that word, "Hey, Nu Yong Ren," one last time, loud enough for his whole table of sycophants to hear. Nervous laughter rippled around the rosewood table, a chorus of cowardice. I stood up, and the room went silent. I walked slowly back to my chair, letting the anticipation hang thick in the air, tasting the metallic fear in the room. I picked up my napkin, placed it neatly beside my plate, and looked Marcus dead in the eye. Then I spoke, my Mandarin pronunciation crisp, clear, and absolutely devastating. I said, "My sincerest apologies for the interruption. I wanted to properly thank you for this excellent meal." The silence wasn't just silence, it was a vacuum, sucking the air out of the lungs of every man there. Marcus's face went white. The color drained so fast he looked like he aged a decade right there in his custom suit. I said, "You called me a servant, Marcus. I spent 2 years at Fudan University. My professor said I had a gift for subtle tones." I gave him a smile that felt like shattered glass. "Tell me, Marcus, would knowing I understood have stopped you from showing exactly who you are?" I switched back to English so every nervous Western executive could understand the sentence of his empire. "As CEO of Apex Energy Solutions, I am hereby terminating all merger negotiations with the Sterling Group, effective immediately." I paused, my voice dropping to a surgical whisper. "A servant doesn't sign billion-dollar partnerships. She ends them." Chaos erupted. Chairs scraped, voices screamed in multiple languages, but before anyone could react, the synchronized chimes of 1,000 phones filled the air. My team had just released the press statement and the audio recording of his racist slur to every major financial news outlet worldwide. But the fight wasn't over. They tried to finish the job back in Atlanta, sending men to run my car off the road. It didn't work. Wounded predators, as my mother taught me, are the most dangerous kind. In the end, it was methodical. Chloe and I used our specialized access to crack Thomas's deleted emails, tracing his explicit plans with Marcus. We handed the complete file, the theft, the fraud, the labor camps, and the conspiracy, to the FBI. I watched from my office window as federal agents walked Thomas out in handcuffs, his expensive suit looking like a clown's costume as reporters swarmed him. I didn't blink. That was the price of betrayal. Marcus, meanwhile, tried to run. He fled Shanghai on a private jet, thinking he could find sanctuary in some Beverly Hills compound. But I gave the FBI his flight details, his alias, his expected contacts, everything. The absolute final moment of satisfaction came via a secure video feed. I watched Marcus Sterling step off his plane at LAX, looking disheveled, scared, clutching a briefcase like a child's blanket. Instead of a welcoming car, dozens of FBI agents emerged from the hangars surrounding him. He shouted, demanding diplomatic immunity, but the agent's voice cut through the noise. "Mr. Sterling, you're being detained for multiple violations of international banking laws. The Chinese government has already approved your immediate deportation." That hit him harder than any physical blow. He wasn't being arrested by American justice. He was being handed back to the people he had embarrassed, the people who play the long game. The color drained from his face again, and he slumped, watching his entire world crumble because of one poisonous word spoken with arrogant certainty.
I closed the laptop, letting the finality of the moment wash over me. I had done what I set out to do. I had protected my company, brought down a toxic empire, and, most importantly, honored the armor my mother taught me to build. Later that week, I drove to the modest house in Atlanta where I grew up. I went into the sitting room, where my mother's favorite rocking chair still sits next to the old piano. I placed a framed photograph of myself, sitting at that notorious banquet table, wearing my mother's pearls, spine straight, next to an old black and white picture of her in her domestic uniform, her eyes fierce and proud. "They used fists in fear," I whispered to the quiet room, to her memory. "We used truth, and when that failed, we used strength." My mother's voice echoed in my head one last time. "Baby, sometimes the biggest victory is just walking away with your head high." And that, my friends, is how I learned that excellence truly is the best revenge. What do you think? Was Naomi Ellison right to destroy a $950 million deal over a single racist insult, even if it exposed massive corruption? Or should she have swallowed her pride and taken the money? I want to know your take on where the line between business and dignity really lies. Drop a comment below, like this video, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next story.